Rated.
Stream is live.
Michael. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for calling in this morning, logging in. For the record, my name is Steve Parrish, General Manager of the Regional Flood Control District. Item 1 is to call the meeting to order. So I will call the meeting to order. Today is February 9th, 2021. Sorry, hold on just 1 second. Okay, so we'll begin with a voice roll call to verify the committee members present. If you are, well, if the committee member is not present, I'll call that name and then I'll call the alternate for a response. So if you could respond when you hear your name called, make sure you're not on mute. I'll note for the record that I am also I'm on the call, and I'll go forward with Ed McGuire.
Present.
Thank you, Ed. Dennis Cedarberg. And Dennis's alternate, Jimmy Floyd. Mike Jensen. And Mike's alternate, Mark Sorensen.
Present.
And Dale Daffer.
Present, Steve.
Thank you. So I'm showing 4 members present. We do have a quorum. Just some housekeeping to remind the members as we go through the agenda, we request any committee members wishing to make a comment, ask a question, or make a motion that you say your name to the record. We will open the floor for questions after presenting each item. Also, after a motion is made and a vote is called for, each committee member will verbally vote. If the vote is unanimous, that will be noted. If there are any nay votes, then a roll call will be completed to accurately identify the vote for the record. This meeting was properly noticed and posted in accordance with the Declaration of Emergency Directive 006 issued by Governor Sisolak on March 22nd, 2020, and subsequent directives extending this directive for the duration of the current state of emergency. These directives suspend the requirement contained in NRS for a physical location to be provided for meetings of public bodies. Pursuant to Directive 006, a physical location has not been provided for this meeting. A live stream of the meeting is available at the web address on the notice of public meeting. Also, an email address, publiccomment@regionalflood.org, was provided in the notice of public meeting to allow the public to participate in this meeting. This email address will be monitored during the meeting should any member of the public wish to participate in the final comment period. Any comments received prior to or during the meeting will be read into the record and become part of the permanent record. And with that, we'll move on to item 2, which is comments by the general public. As noticed on the agenda posting, comments by the general public regarding items on this agenda or to be posted at public comment at regionalflood.org. Tammy, could you verify if we received any public comments?
Mr. Chair, Tammy McMahon, for the record, there are no public comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone on the call that's wishing to speak on an item, on a posted agenda item? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Next slide, please. Item 3 is action to approve the agenda. I'll note that there is a typo in item number 7. The discussion regarding the quarterly progress reports will be involving fiscal year 2021, and it's mislabeled as fiscal year 1920. With that change, the agenda is in order for approval. Any discussion? Entertain a motion.
Ed McGuire, motion to approve with the adjustment of the typo.
Thank you, Ed. There's motion on the floor for approval with the noted change from Ed McGuire. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay. And that motion carries unanimously. Next slide, please. Item 4 is action to approve the minutes of the November 10, 2020 meeting. The minutes are in order for approval. Any discussion? Entertain a motion.
Dale Daffer, motion to approve item number 4.
Thank you, Dale. There's motion on the floor for approval from Dale Daffern. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Next slide, please. Item 5 is action to accept a presentation and receive an update on proposed water quality standards for the Las Vegas Wash for selenium. I believe Mr. John Tennant, our Regional Flood Control District Environmental Mitigation Manager, is going to discuss this item. John, when you're ready, you can go ahead and make your presentation.
Hey, just wanted to give you a quick update on where we're at. At the last meeting, we reported that we had scheduled a meeting to present the data on the selenium project to the US EPA. We held that meeting with EPA in November after the last meeting. The meeting was very positive. We had a lot of support from the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. One of the only thing that was really of question by the US EPA was the age of the data. They had concerns that because a lot of the data that we're relying on some of it is 10 years old now. And they expressed some concerns. We did some follow-up analysis, but we've heard back from them, and they are requiring us to do some additional analysis, which will require fish collection and fish sampling in the Las Vegas Wash to update the data that was collected in the 2003 to 2010. And so we are still working with NDEP to try to address some of EPA's concerns. There's a slight chance that we may be able to convince them that we don't need to collect data, but it's highly unlikely at this point. One of the good things is that they indicated that we only need to collect carp, which makes it a lot easier to collect those fish because they're pretty abundant in the wash, so it shouldn't be too hard to collect some carp. And so we'll have to do some analysis to determine how many carp we have to collect and when, and that will start up hopefully shortly. So at this point, we're looking at having to do another round of fish collection for the selenium data. We expect that data will come back consistent with the previous data. We don't expect it to be any different. And then we'll move forward from there. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, John. Any questions from the members or anyone on the call? I think we need a motion to accept the presentation. Entertain a motion.
Ed McGuire, motion to accept. Sorry.
I think I heard Ed McGuire made a motion to accept the presentation. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Next slide, please. Item 6 is action to accept a presentation and receive an update on the Regional Detention Basin Program. I believe Ms. Angie McKinnon is going to present this item today. So Angie, when you're ready, if you can take yourself off mute, you can begin your presentation.
All right, I am ready. So thank you. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Regional Detention Basin Program that's part of the MS4 permit. So next slide. The very first element is, well, why are we talking about this? And MS4 permitting has certainly changed over the decades. In the early 2000s, EPA wanted to focus another program on post-construction. So after construction, when those developments were taken online, whether it was residence or commercial properties, having programs to mitigate impacts from that new development area. So much of what we were already doing as part of the source control program, the public outreach program, we adapted that to be part of the post-construction program. So NDEP brought this into the Las Vegas Valley MS4 permit in our 2010 permits. This was the first time it became official in our MS4 permit. And so we're still operating under those permit requirements and the programs for post-development. So the watershed program is one of the programs we've developed, and the focus is to look at collecting any sediment, debris from these areas of new development before they continue down the MS4 and down to the wash. So next slide. So we have the MS4 permit that has the post-construction program requirements, and one of the permit requirements is having an assessment of the regional flood control facilities. So in developing the stormwater management plan, we put together this watershed-based approach as one of the elements to address post-construction. It's site design, it's good housekeeping by residents and commercial properties, and then also having this watershed-based approach, like we have within our regional facilities, to not just address the flood control elements, but also the stormwater quality elements. So the focus of today's presentation is, where are we with our regional detention basin program? So next slide. So when we're talking about stormwater quality features, these can be thought of as detention basins within our regional detention basins. These regional facilities are sized for 100-year events, so these large storms, and the smaller storms, which we're targeting for the MS4 program, they can pass through with very little detention, very little settlement of sediments. So we're creating these areas where that settlement can occur within these regional facilities. So a couple options that are shown, having some berms near the outlet with a chimney riser where flow can then overtop and be able to impound some of the water behind and then slowly detained, so the flows then go out the outlet structure for the detention basin. We can look at doing other alternative configurations for the outlet structure. And then this is combined with a maintenance program to make sure that the trash, the sediment is collected for these more frequent events, which is what we see, more frequent events. So making sure that those areas are cleaned before next larger events. So these are the stormwater quality features that we currently have within the valley. So the next slide. So when we first developed the program, the very first thing was developing planning and design criteria. So we did an assessment of the potential development within the Las Vegas Valley permit area, which is basically within the ultimate development boundary within the Las Vegas Valley, and assessed that it was about 1,400 acre-foot of potential stormwater volume from new development. And when we did an assessment of the detention basins that were planned or any existing facilities that had plans for upgrades, we came up with about 1,700 acre-foot that could be incorporated into detention basins. So we were looking at this as a program as a whole and seeing that there was the potential and that we have the potential within our detention basins for the new development within the Las Vegas Valley. And then we have it sorted by watersheds, and we have a pollutant trading approach between these watersheds, that if we're not able to capture the new development runoff in one watershed, making sure that we are capturing it with development in another watershed. But we're tracking the program as a whole for the Las Vegas Valley watershed. Next slide. So one of the things we wanted to do was make this easy to be able to figure out how much volume do we need in the detention basins. So we utilized an empirical equation that was being used throughout the country as WEF and ASCE required equation. It's based off of empirical information. And so using an 85th percentile or rainfall depth appropriate to the location, multiply that basically by the number of acres upstream, and we're able to figure out how much volume is necessary. So we just have a two-page approach on how to calculate how much volume is needed within the detention basins. Next slide. So on the right, this is how we're tracking it as a program as a whole, and I'll get to that. But we're looking at this pollutant trading approach. So how it works, there's two watersheds displayed on the left, and the one to the north has about 5 acre-foot that needs to be treated from new development. Same in the southern watershed. But there are some detention basins, Pioneer Detention Basin is a great example, where we may not be able to expand the limits of the detention basin. There might be boundaries with a railroad or the US 95 like we had with Pioneer Detention Basin, and that may limit the amount that we can treat in one of our detention basins. So if we couldn't manage that 5 acre-feet from that northern watershed, we can look at opportunities like in the southern watershed where we could capture both 5 acre-foot from new development, but then also 5 acre-foot from the existing development. And if we can capture within that detention basin for the full development upstream, then that's how we can do the pollutant trading. But we are looking at actual development upstream of the detention basins. So when we bring all of that together for a watershed-based analysis, so the entire Las Vegas Valley as a whole, we are tracking on the red line, that's the volume, the required volume from new development compared to the blue horizontal lines, which is how much we have within the stormwater features within the regional flood control facilities. So where we are today, which is a focus of this discussion, we're keeping at pace at this point in time with required volume from new development of about 160 acre-foot. We have about 165 acre-foot within the stormwater features. And so we're using this now to look at projections over the next 3 years to be able to project what's going to be coming online. But the status of the program from the last annual report is we're keeping on pace with the new development. So the next slide.
Angie, can you
Yes.
explain the difference between new development and existing development?
Absolutely. So new development is considered anything that was developed after 2013. So if you look at the graphic, it starts with 2013, 2014. We had the permit that went into effect in 2010. We had a few years to develop the stormwater management plan and implement it. So the clock for new development really started in 2013. And so anything that's new since 2013, we are counting as new development. So an existing development would be anything that was in operation before that time. And so we use the Clark County certificates of construction to be able to identify what new development is.
Hey, Angela? This
Yeah.
is Ed McGuire. I have a kind of related question. I presume this works. We're trading pollution credits, if you will, because we're not measuring each watershed. We're measuring the whole, right? That's what makes this work, is that we look at water quality at the exit at the Las Vegas Wash. Is that correct?
You are correct, yes, that we may not be able to get all of the actual new development. And so as long as we're treating development, so whether it's existing or whether it's new, we're counting it because it's going into the receiving waters. And so we're just making sure that we are treating development. Of course, any of these new detention basins that are going in, which upstream of those is new development, we're incorporating these stormwater features into those new detention basins, but we're also looking at where we can retrofit existing detention basins, which would have that pre-2013 development that we're still counting as being part of this program because it's going to our receiving waters.
Okay, thank you.
And we're not required by this program to treat existing development. So
No,
when
we
we
are
do
not.
that, it's kind of above and beyond what our permit requirements are.
And we do have other measures in place with new development. So we've completely expanded our source control program to extend through the new developments. We do outreach that includes those new development areas. There are site design measures for large parking lots that are newly development. So this is one element of the post-construction program. Any other questions right now? All right, I'll continue along, and please feel free to ask more questions as they come up. So with this 7 years of what I would refer to as big data, because we have large databases of information that we've collected at this point in time, we wanted to do another look at the program just to see how development has occurred, because we did make some planning estimates at the beginning of the program. And so we wanted to look at, well, based off of what has been developed, do we see any changes? So still looking at that required capture volume of 1,400 acre foot. We did another analysis of the detention basins. We came down from 1,700 acre foot to just over 1,500 acre foot that we still think is attainable within the detention basins, and we'll go through that discussion. Where we are today, 168 acre foot is what we have actively being managed in the stormwater features, and what's constructed and under construction is 244 acre foot. So we still have another, let's say, 70 acre foot that will be coming online within these stormwater features over the next few years. Next slide. So there are 8 existing detention basins within the valley that have these stormwater features right now. And then there are 5 planned detention basins that will be coming online with the stormwater features. And then there's 2 existing detention basins that are planned with upgrades that have the potential for stormwater features. So these dots are exaggerated, so they're not actually this large. We wanted to make sure that you could see them from your computers. But this is what we are right now. In the geographical spread, you'll notice that many of them are on the upstream portions of watersheds. Again, we want to focus as much as possible on new development, and where we can't capture new development, look at any of the urbanized detention basins within the valley. Next slide. The other advancements since 2013, a lot of really good effort was put into developing the 2018 MPU, and time was put into looking at the percent impervious for various land use categories. With all the big data that we had from Clark County, we were able to see the land use of categories of what has gone in, size of parcels, and then with using the 2018 MPU, we could then calculate the stormwater volume. So some of what the 2018 MPU did is look at disconnecting impervious, directly connected impervious areas, which is actually a stormwater quality benefit. So we saw some of the percent impervious go down. A couple land use categories went up slightly, but there were a few adjustments since the last MPU. And so we've done a reevaluation of the program with these percent impervious numbers and with the Clark County information. So next slide. So the very first column is the permit year, and this slide is showing what was reported in the annual report. So that's this first column that says annual total. That's what we've reported each year in the annual reports. Well, we did this reevaluation. There are really two things that we focused on. We looked at the large parcels that were being incorporated into this program. And when we really scrolled in on the 1 acre and larger properties, there were properties that were 5 acres, 10 acres that really were only developed by 1 acre. And so we were using that percent impervious to the entire 10 acres or 5 acres, which was really making the numbers larger than what was actually installed with percent impervious. So we looked then at GIS maps, any investigations we did. So we were able to bring the percent impervious down to actually match what was developed. In addition, we don't have to focus on individual lots less than an acre or smaller parcels that are not part of a common development. So when we looked at the geographical spread throughout the valley, if there were just these discrete locations that weren't part of a common development, we were able to remove those from the analysis because they're not part of the MS4 permit if they don't meet the 1 acre threshold or being part of a common development. So this next column shows the reevaluated total with these two items. And you can see from this that the totals went down slightly. However, with using actual percent impervious, the percents themselves actually increased. So we have a decrease in the amount of new development area, but a slightly increased amount of percent impervious. We had planned the program with 50% impervious, which was the percent impervious of the Las Vegas Valley as a whole at 2013, but new development in itself has a slightly higher percent impervious because there's not some of the open lands that are already existing in the valley. So we're getting about 60% impervious for the new development if you just look at an average of the last 7-8 years of records. So now what we've done is on the parcel size, using the MPU categories, figuring out what that stormwater volume is. The next slide. Again, I'm running through this very quickly, but we took those annual numbers from the annual report that's here at this first column and a comparison with these reevaluated numbers for the volume that is required to be treated based off of the MS4 permit requirements. And so over the first 4 or 5 years, the numbers are less because there were many of those large parcels that weren't fully developed. So we were able to remove some of those large undevelopment areas from the analysis. And then in the last couple of years, it's a slight increase. There weren't as many of those large parcels, but the percent impervious at 60% was a little higher. So where we are today, the required volume with using an adjustment factor, that's another point of discussion with how this program was developed. As we get these larger volumes, these larger areas, for this to be done and matched up with a software, there's generally adjustment factors that are applied. So now that we have 10 square miles developed within the valley, we applied the adjustment factor that had been planned. So from the annual reports, it was 157 acre foot, but now with the reevaluation, we're looking at 165 acre foot of required capture volume from new development. So slight increase, but we see this as defensible using actual data. So next slide.
Dale with North Las Vegas, just one quick question.
Yes.
It just seems to me that the amount of impervious area would be a lot larger than you're displaying there. And don't get me wrong, I don't know exactly how you did it, but using like a building footprint, a driveway, and all the pavement, curb gutter, sidewalk that goes with the residential development, it just seems like there would be a lot larger new impervious area than was shown in a couple previous slides. Am I missing something?
No, that's a really good point, because this is residential, commercial, open space. This includes everything. So we included all of the new development and included the percent impervious for whatever land use category that was. So this may include open space, which then would bring that percent impervious down. So it isn't just residential, which I agree that would be higher. So this is inclusive of all kinds of new development.
Well, I can weigh in there too. As Angie said, we went through this with a very fine-tooth comb on the 2018 MPU. And really what we're talking about, Dale, if you take a snapshot of a aerial photograph of a typical residential subdivision and a house, you're probably right that the percentages, impervious area is probably higher than 60% or 70%. But what we looked at is the directly connected impervious area. So like if you look at a whole rooftop, if the rooftop drains to the backyard and over gravel or grass before it gets to the street, then we don't include that as directly connected impervious area. So that's one of the reasons why that the actual impervious area on the lot might be higher, but we don't actually have to calculate the entire lot, the entire impervious area for these calculations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, roger that. Thank you.
Okay, good question. All right, next slide. So looking at the reevaluation of this new required capture volume, showing the curve, the red line again, that's the required capture volume from new development compared to what is within the stormwater features within the Las Vegas Valley. Again, we're keeping up pace within our stormwater features compared to required capture volume from the new development. So that is with this reevaluation that we are keeping pace. Next slide. So we've had a number of meetings with the permittees, and we will continue having these meetings. One of the important elements is looking at our projections and projecting over the next few years. When are these stormwater features planned to come online? Looking at the potential for new development coming online. We just use a linear progression based off of what may be somewhat of a steep slope, but we want to look at this and feel comfortable that over the next 3 years we have a good plan when things are coming online, knowing that some construction could be advanced or it could be delayed a little bit. But looking over the next 3 years, we have a plan in place where we would have 360 acre foot of stormwater volume within detention basins compared to potentially 320 acre foot required capture volume from new developments. And so we'll keep doing this on an annual basis, seeing if there's any changes to CIPs, see if there's any changes to when these facilities will come online. But we do have a solid path of the next few years and planning these stormwater features. Next slide. And so just a summary of what we've talked about, and then certainly anything else that you'd like to talk about. We're really focusing this program on the new development that's greater than an acre or smaller new development that's part of a common development. The Regional Detention Basin Program is one component of the post-construction or new development program. When we developed the program, we had to make some estimates, and we made really good guesses, But what we have to do now is look at more of the actuals, which is what we've been doing over the last 6 months, seeing how we can analyze and reevaluate the system based off of how development has occurred, use those actuals, use the 2018 MPU to really give ourselves a good evaluation of where this program is to date. So we reevaluated the criteria. As far as how we've kept pace, we've got about the similar acre foot within the stormwater features as required to be treating based off of what we have in the stormwater management plan. And we have a plan in place for the next few years. And so annually, as I mentioned, we're going to redo these projections. So then next year we'd have 1 extra year in that graph looking at what our best projections are for the next few years. And this program has a lot of details. And so some of what we've talked about is having some workshops with NDEP to really drill into the details. So if that's something of use for NDEP, we can really spend some time to get into the details of this program. So that's a summary of what I discussed. Are there any other questions? Well, I'm happy to answer any other questions that come John's way or Andrew's way. Thank you so much for the questions that were asked.
Okay. Thank you, Angie, for that presentation. That was very informative. Good information. Thank you. There's no other questions. We need to get a motion to accept the presentation, but I just want to point or make sure that I think I saw Jimmy Floyd join the call. I want to make sure you're voting for the county.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. We want to make sure we get the record right on the votes. So thank you. So with that, I'll call for a motion to accept the presentation for item 6.
Dale Daffern, North Las Vegas, motion to approve the presentation.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve the presentation from Dale Daffern. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Next slide, please. Thank you. Item 7 is to discuss the FY 2021 quarterly reports and take action as deemed appropriate. We did receive the Q2 report from all of the members. We looked through the information. It looks good, and I believe we're on track to meet our permit requirements for the year, at least so far. I wanted to note that we did, the Regional Flood Control District did run stormwater ads this quarter on all of the major networks, as well as Telemundo. So that was completed. You might have saw the ads running during the quarter. With that, is there any questions, discussion, anything that anyone wants to bring up in terms of the quarterly reports that are on the call? Okay, hearing none, there's no action required on this item. It's just to discuss the report. So we'll move on to item 8. Next slide, please. Item 8 is to discuss monitoring activities and issues and take action as deemed appropriate. Dry weather monitoring. Is there anyone from SNWA on the call that has anything to say about the dry weather monitoring program? Okay, I didn't see anybody, I don't think, from SNWA join the call. So how about wet weather monitoring? Angie, is there anything to report on that?
No, there's just been some minor incidences of rain, but not enough to generate a runoff event for us to collect.
Okay. Kind of hard to do wet weather monitoring when we have a 240-day snow with no rain, right?
Yeah.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 9. Next slide, please. Item 9 is to discuss Nevada Division of Environmental Protection issues and take action as deemed appropriate. Alex or anybody on the phone, do you have anything to discuss today?
Just some updates regarding the MS4 permit. So we're in the final stages of the internal review from my upper management. So we will be reaching out by the end of the month to set up a meeting and to have all the permittees comments and whatnot. And I'll be doing that through John Tennert, and that's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, item 10 is to discuss other stakeholder issues and take action as deemed appropriate. Do we have anyone on the call from NDOT? How about Nellis Air Force Base? I know, just for everyone's information, that we had a channel project through Nellis Air Force Base that we're just wrapping up, which will help control erosion on the base. So we're glad to see that that project being completed. It's not easy to build projects on the Air Force Base, so I'm glad that's wrapping up. Any other stakeholders that want to address the committee this morning? Okay, next slide, please. We'll move on to item 11. Which is to discuss items for the next SQMC agenda. Are there any items that any of the members or anyone on the call would like to add to the agenda for the next meeting? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 12. Which is comments by the general public. As noticed on the agenda posting, comments by the general public regarding items on this agenda are to be posted to public comment at regionalflood.org. Tammy, could you verify if we received any public comments?
Mr. Chair, Tammy McMahon, for the record, there are no public comments.
Okay. Is there anyone on the call that would like to say anything during the comment period? Okay. Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dave.